This is the Sabbath School lesson for the first quarter, 2022.
Welcome to Lesson 11, Jesus, author and perfecter of our faith, ready for teaching on March 12. It's from the series In These Last Days, the Message of Hebrews. Our author is Dr. Felix Cortes, the Associate Professor of New Testament Literature in the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary at Andrews University. And I'm your reader for today, Dr. Percy Harrold. Wednesday, March 9. By faith, Rahab and the rest. Read Hebrews chapter 11, verse 31, and Joshua 2, verses 9 to 11. Why was Rahab, a pagan prostitute, included in this text of sacred biblical characters? Hebrews 11:31. By faith the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace. And Joshua 2:9 to 11. And said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, that the terror of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were on the other side of the Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. And as soon as we heard these things, our hearts melted. Neither did there remain any more courage in anyone because of you, for the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. Rahab is probably the most unexpected character whom we find in Hebrews chapter 11. Rahab is one of two women mentioned by name. She is the 10th in the list, the first being forefathers and patriarchs of Israel, and each one is regarded as being righteous. When we come to her, we find that she not only is a woman, but also a Gentile prostitute. The most surprising thing is that she also is the thematic centre and climax of the chapter. The list is organized in a unique way. Each entry begins with the repetitive use of the phrase, by faith. The basic pattern is, by faith, so-and-so did such and such, or by faith, such and such happened to so-and-so. This repetitive pattern increases the expectation in the reader to hear the climactic assertion that, by faith, Joshua led the people into the promised land. But that's not what the text says. Instead, Joshua is passed over, and the prostitute takes his place. After the mention of Rahab, the repetitive pattern ends abruptly with, and what more shall I say, in verse 32. Let's read the whole of verse 32. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, and also of David and Samuel and the prophets. Then Paul hurriedly lists some names and events that he does not explain in detail. Rahab's deed of faith was that she heard, believed, and obeyed, even though she did not see. She did not see the plagues of Egypt, or the deliverance in the Red Sea, or the water flow from the rock, or the bread descend from heaven, yet she believed. She was a good exemplar for the audience of Hebrews who did not hear Jesus preach or see him do a miracle, and for us as well, who did not see any of these things either. Ellen White writes in Daughters of God, page 35, Rahab was a harlot who lived on the wall of Jericho. She hid the two Israelite spies sent to check out the defences of that city. Because of her kindness to them and her declaration of belief in God, the spies promised that the lives of Rahab and her family would be spared when the attack came on Jericho. End of quote. Paul then continues in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 35 to 38, with a list of the hardships many faced. The phrase refusing to accept in verse 35 implies that they had the possibility to escape but chose not to, because their sights were set on the reward of God. Hebrews 11, beginning at verse 35. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trials of mockings and scourgings, yes, and of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains, in dens and caves of the earth. And so to finish today, though we have not seen any of these things happen, the six-day creation, the Exodus, the cross of Christ, why do we have so many good reasons for believing that they did? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.